Kinberg with The Hollywood Reporter, and I'd like to welcome Shawn Levy, Salim Akil, Jonathan Nolan, Jason Blum, Simon Kinberg, Melissa Rosenberg, and Robert Kirkman. Thank you for joining us at our first genre roundtable. If you could tell me about a time when you really had to fight for something for one of your projects, when you really had to go to bat to make something happen that you wanted.
Shawn?
Okay. I guess, we had a few of those moments on season 1 of Stranger Things where I hadn't really produced television, the Duffer Brothers hadn't really done television, and yet we were just kind of going with the flow of the Duffers' instincts, and it became clear that we did not have enough money. And there's that moment where you either kind of just grind down and figure it out, or you just have the courage to ask for more. And I have to say, on that show, and with Netflix on that show, there was always this feeling like, okay, if they want to say no, they'll say no, but I'm definitely going to ask. And so for us, there were a few moments where our Demogorgon was not working out, and it was clear that we were going to have to go from man in a suit to Digi monster. And so we asked for the extra resources to do it, and we got it, and worked out.
Jesus Christ. You haven't kind of arrived in Hollywood if you haven't had a handful of those moments. I think that's what's fun about all our jobs, is that no one knows anything, and I've been on both sides of that moment. There are things that I've said no to that have gone on to great success, which is not fun. Once you've experienced that, it comes more naturally to fight. But the biggest example for me was Paranormal Activity, which is famous, which is a story that I'm not going to go into, except that everyone said no for so long, and it was such a big success. And I remember after that having much more confidence than what I had kind of, you hear this thing of like, if you have it, hold on to it and keep fighting for it. That's much easier said than done until you live through Stranger Things or whatever it is. And once you've lived through it, it's easier to fight, I think.
I think most people, I would imagine most people that around this table or that work in Hollywood, how they broke into the business was after a series of no's, and then one yes broke them through. And for me, literally the first thing I ever wrote that got made was Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that every studio in Hollywood passed on, and then I retooled the pitch. It was a pitch at the time, and then pitched it to the same people, and the same people said no again. And we had different actors falling in and out of it, and so that was an odyssey of like 4 years of no, until there were enough yeses to just get the movie started. When grown-ups tell you no and you believe otherwise, until you're proven right, you believe the grown-ups.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
I think for me, our first season of Black Lightning was a test, because we had a superhero who wasn't quite like most. And there was a scene where he was arrested, drugs was planted on him, and he couldn't use his powers because he didn't want to out himself. And he went through the cavity search. And while he was going through the cavity search, he groaned and a little spit fell out of his mouth. SMP did not like that. And they took it all the way to the FCC. And we won. And it went on television, and it was one of the best scenes, the most talked about scenes on our show, because to see this man who has powers, to see him arrested, to see him go through that was empowering, because a lot of black men and women have talked about these things happening, and they have to show a certain amount of restraint without having powers. And so to see this superhero go through it and not be able to use his powers, the juxtaposition of that, I thought, was well done. And it's our show, but it was written well and it was directed well, and I was proud of that, because it went through the FCC. The network was actually very supportive. It was SMP who didn't want to do it. And so when they came back and said we could do it, that was a win. That was a great win. It felt good, yeah.
My most recent struggle was entirely self-serving. There's in season 2 of Jessica Jones, there's a flashback episode number 7, And we get to see one of the characters as she was transitioning from child star to adult go through her pop princess moment. And we shot a music video, which I was like, I have to be there for the shooting of that music video. I moved freaking heaven and earth to be there on the, I had to be home, I had to be back here for a mix session, I'd be editing, everything was backing up, I was stopping everything slowed down, of course. I was like, I don't care, I'm gonna be there for that goddamn music video. It was it was the funnest possible thing in the world. I freaking love that. Highlight of my life, didn't necessarily help the show.
Hopefully you internalize. The more that happens to you, you internalize it so everyone at the table works with other creative people. And when I see that fire, we did the movie called The Gift with Joel Edgerton, and he wanted it to end one way, and I wanted it to end the other way. But you could see in his, I could see what I had in my eyes with Paranormal Activity in his eyes, and we did it his way, not my way, and he was absolutely right. And that really is a fun thing about making movies and TV shows, is it works both ways. And hopefully, people have the power to kind of push things forward, recognize it in both directions.
Well, you also get galvanized by the energy of your collaborators. I mean,
yes,
I mean,
totally.
we all work in jobs where, none of us are doing our thing alone. And I know, literally weekly on Stranger Things, the Duffers, because they came to this pretty new, they have a fierceness to their vision. And it doesn't occur to them like, oh no, you don't need to play ball. Like, they want what they want, and if they think it's right, they're gonna lay down. And as someone who's, made some movies and done stuff for longer, I find that really inspiring, and I carry it forward. It's like, oh yeah, that's what fight looks like, and that's sometimes really, really valuable.
Well, I think actually it's a really good point, because I think the longer one works in Hollywood, Hollywood, in a way, I think, teaches
Beats
compromise.
the passion out of you.
Teaches compromise, and compromise is actually just a nice word for surrender. And I think the sort of what you're talking, like the blind faith in oneself, gets beaten out of you at a certain point. But if you take enough chances and are right enough of the time, and it's sort of like baseball, if 1 out of 3 is like Hall of Fame, like if you're a .333 hitter, you're a Hall of Fame hitter. So if you're right enough, I think that people start to trust that they will go with your. Another example for me that isn't self-serving, but is about Ryan Reynolds on Deadpool. Deadpool was a project that was around for over 10 years. And Ryan and the writers, Rhett and Paul, and the director, Tim Miller of the first movie, just kept on that film. And they wrote a PG-13 version, and they wrote a script that had comic book images and all kinds of other concept art in it, and it just wouldn't get made because there were no R-rated superhero movies at the time. And it was a kind of groundbreaking, original, fresh, different kind of comic book film. And so finally, sort of it took the collective force and the compromise of, okay, fine, we'll do it for a fraction of what these other movies are made for the studio to say yes. And then once that worked, then it was like, okay, well, you can make as many as you want, and for a different budget.
But I think if people sorry to keep going on this topic, but I think
we will get to a second question.
I think it's a key, really important thing for people who may be watching, who are kind of at the more beginning of their career, because the takeaway is not the takeaway should not be pick your thing and fight every fight. And I think one of the most difficult things about all of our jobs, and it changes as you have more experience and success, is knowing when to pick your battles and when not to. And I think that's, and it's very different. And I just went up against a network president, and I had a conversation with him, and I messed it up, and it was a battle I shouldn't have picked. I went all in on it. He gave me a really good reason why not to do it, and I realized I approached it wrong. And so it's an important thing not to just come away saying my way or the highway. You just have to know when to say that. It's very hard. It's very hard to know when, and it's very hard to do.
I do want to turn to one of the more important aspects of, I think, working in genre, which are the fans. Jonathan, I know before Westworld, kicked off its second season, you did a tease on Reddit for the fans and promised to reveal the second season in its entirety, and that was a little bit of a trick on the fans. Why did you do that? And are you? And because I know
What's your home address?
And no, are you glad you did, and sort of the results of the fan reaction?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was galvanizing about the first season was that Reddit community. Right? I'm not on social media. I don't give a shit about Twitter or Facebook. I think they're broken systems. The problem with Facebook and Twitter is you can't vote people down, right? You can only vote opinions up. And that sounds polite. That sounds like, sort of more diplomatic. It actually means the conversation veers towards negativity. With Reddit, one of the things we liked about the community, you can vote opinions up and down. So what that means is it actually winds up being a more civilized conversation. And that community rallied around the show out of the first season. I mean, you don't want to reduce the show to a series of twists and turns, but it's hard not to be charmed by a group of people who are putting as much time into thinking about your show as you did when you put it together. So we have a special affinity for that community, and we felt like the best way to celebrate that was to fuck with them a little bit.
Want me to stay here forever, do you? Enjoying running my company, Bill. Living in my house. Fucking my daughter.
Juliet's dead. She killed herself.
I think every week someone comes up with the brilliant idea of Rick Grimes is in a coma, right? And this is all a dream. And I love it because it's like every 4 or 5 days someone comes at it like it's like a great new idea. And I've been getting it since the comic book started, 15 years ago. So that's always fun. But I don't know. I mean, I love the fan interaction. I think that you're absolutely right. It does all tend to, skew negative. But I think that being able to to be able to decipher that feedback, to be able to like see what people are saying, I think is kind of a gift. I think that that's something that wasn't really around 10, 15 years ago. You can look at it as a curse. It is also sometimes painful. But I think as long as you have a thick enough skin to be able to dive in and go, oh, they hate this, they hate that, they hate that. Well, that thing we're in. I don't know, as a writer, I feel like everything I do is terrible anyway. Like I get that feeling where I'm like, oh yeah, they're gonna find me out now. This is just terrible. And so it can tend to sometimes reinforce those feelings, but I feel like, having that back and forth and getting a sense of what people think is important.
Now we're gonna need a new understanding. Apologies. Punishment.
Kill me.
What did you say?
If you have to kill someone, there has to be punishment, then kill me.
The challenge, though, is not to let it steer the ship.
Yeah.
You want to know what people are saying, but you don't want to let that influence you when you go back into that writer's room, because that's a disaster.
Well, the beauty of working on something like Netflix, which several of us do, is you don't have any feedback before the entire series drops.
Yeah.
That's a plus and a minus, if you really want that feedback, but there's no test audience, there's no anything. So you get to, as a creator, you get to really form your show with your vision. And it's a very small group of people who have eyes on it, for better or worse. Whether it succeeds or fails, it's all on you. There's not like a whole lot of that.
But haven't you felt kind of what Jonathan's saying? I know when we've gone in to break season 2 and then 3, we get so much feedback, all of us, and Stranger Things, because I think so much of the audience is young and very much living and vocal on social media. That balance between like take it in and then, but once you go into the room and you're breaking your next season, don't you find you have to do that magic trick of having taken it in, but now being myopic and a little bit deaf to it and just listening to the quieter inner voices that brought you to the party in the first place?
Oh, absolutely. And with Jessica Jones in our first season, it shocked us all how well it was received, and it got itself a little Peabody, which we were happy about. But then you go back into the room after that. That's your first season. I was fucking terrified. Yeah. I mean, just terrified. Just staring at, oh my God, what do I do now? And the bar is so freaking high over here. We just go, okay, we're not even looking at that bar. We're just going to do something entirely different.
They will lump me in with that maniac, and they will start pinning every unsolved crime on me because that's what they do.
Not that you have a chip on your shoulder.
Just fix this!
Don't snap at me.
You're the one that sent Price after me in the first place, so stop dicking around.
You are far from my biggest concern at the moment.
Oh, what? So now I'm on my own?
Only if you keep alienating everyone around you.
A lot of our work is based on source material and source material that the fans are religious about. And so in the same way that you have religious fundamentalists, you have like fanboy and girl fundamentalists. And you have to understand in the same way that you would, I think, a religious zealot, that being true to the essence of the book is what you're trying to do as a fan ourselves. It's the reason that we were drawn to that particular piece of material. But not being true to every letter. If you actually read the Bible literally, you're a crazy person, like, you know, and stoning people to death. But if you read the essence of the lessons that are being taught and the emotional sort of character stories that are being told, and you're true to that, then I think you're telling the story that got you inspired in the first place. And like Shawn's saying, you stick to the thing that got you excited and drew you to Jessica Jones, to Walking Dead, like anything that Westworld as the movie, even though you've strayed so far from the original movie. And for me, working on
more
all the
Yul
comic books.
Brynner next time.
But you do, like, I think you have to acknowledge the fan in yourself first before the fans out there.
Well, that's,
yeah, and we're not only dealing with, as well as the idea of fanboys and girls, we're also dealing with this idea of, you know, being 40-something years, one generation up out of Jim Crow, there are not a lot of African-American superheroes. So the thing that I carried in creating the show was, I can't ignore that. I had seen superheroes fighting in space, superheroes fighting in made-up worlds, but I was always wondering, like, why don't nobody take their ass down to Chicago and clean that up? You know, we could use Batman down there, right? And so in approaching the show and thinking about putting it on, I knew I had to address some of those issues, those real-world issues, because if I didn't, I would be those fanboys and fangirls, but also the African-American audience would call foul.
The liquor store just got robbed.
And I'm sure the description is what? A black man dressed in a suit and tie, getaway car, a mid-size Volvo wagon.
Have a good night, sir.
I had to listen to the quiet of my own head, my own mind, my own justice, my own sort of morality, and see what I could do with that. And when we opened up the show with our hero being pulled over by the cops with his daughters in the car, you know, people were like, this isn't a superhero show. And we said, well, we'll show you. It'll be a different type of superhero. So when you talk about the fans, that was a whole different aspect of dealing with them that I was prepared for and was happy that they accepted the show. Because otherwise, my ass would have had to leave the country.
Robert, Walking Dead, of course, has killed off its fair share of beloved characters, and a more recent one, I think, sort of strayed from the original material, and that can really piss off fans. When do you?
And it did.
It did. So when do you decide to sort of deviate from what they may be expecting based on the source material?
I mean, it's a weird process on Walking Dead because we have a full writing staff and a writer's room, and they're working on things. But I'm an executive producer. I'm there, and so I'm actively like participating in changing material that I myself wrote, which is really weird, but it's fun, I guess. My favorite thing is, early in the seasons, I was in the writer's room full time, and we would be around the room, and they would kind of forget, And so we'd just be sitting there, and they'd be like, yeah, we're getting to that one thing in the comics, but that didn't really work. I didn't really like where that, Robert, hey, And so I had to get used to that, which was, fun. But I don't know, I mean, it's the comic is a thing that I work on with Charlie Adler, that I've written. And by the time we're adapting issues, it's 5 years old, that material. I'm sick of it. I want to try something new. And then you've got this brilliant staff of writers that are coming up with new ideas and different ways to work with the material. And that's energizing to me. We have the luxury, not being at Netflix, of people seeing snippets of our material and then judging the rest of the season on that. And so, that sometimes can be a little nerve-wracking.
Have any of you implemented something into your show or a franchise that was a suggestion from social media or from fans yet?
Is anyone going to say yes?
We definitely have.
Even if it was true, it would be such a slippery slope to acknowledge it.
Wait, why? We do that like the Purge. We did the first Purge. Everyone it's inside. We want to know what happens when we go outside. And then when we did the second Purge, we were like, we got to show the streets. We do that a lot. Why is that?
Well, that's like a fan.
That's a little different than
that's
actually
not like,
ripping
I
off
wanna
somebody's
see,
idea.
Yeah, that's not like I want to see like a
Sean's worrying about getting sued. Sean has 4 or 5 daughters. He's got a family. He can't get sued.
I got it.
That's what he's saying.
I mean, there was a moment where we were everyone wanted Barb to somehow be miraculously alive. After the first season, we were like, do we do that? Like, because sometimes it's a matter of, right? It's kind of like, I was thinking about what you were saying, Simon, with kind of understanding what is sacrosanct and what people think they want. But you have to know a little bit better. Yeah. You have to trust that you know a little bit better. And I know that sounds more condescending than 9/10, but in the case of Barb, there were so many theories that she was going to come back. She was actually alive, and I'm not going to lie, we spent maybe 20 seconds talking about it. But I think that sometimes fans stumble into theories that are crazy accurate. That I found, where I'm reading something, I'm like, oh my God, when this person realizes.
Sean just admitted that he takes those theories and then turns them into episodes. That's what Sean just said. I wrote or co-wrote X-Men 3, which is the Dark Phoenix story, which is probably the most sacred or beloved of the X-Men storylines in the comics. And people, fanboys and girls and humans of all ages, did not love the movie. And I lived through many things online, wishing me cancer and hoping my whole family would die, and all of those things that are lovely to read because you were just trying to tell a story. And at the end of X-Men: Days of Future Past, which I then wrote years later, that's a time travel story. And the end of that previous movie that people didn't like, Wolverine kills Jean Grey, and so I thought, well, here's an opportunity, strangely, to rewrite this mistake, let's say, or whatever, but thing that people didn't love as much as they loved the comic, and bring Jean back to life and have Wolverine actually have it as if X3 never happened. And so at the end of Days of Future Past, that is literally what happens. We erase the lineage of X3. So I got to go back with an eraser and essentially erase a $200+ million movie.
But didn't you have a bunch of X3 fans then being like, what the heck, man? I love that movie.
Not a vocal group.
They weren't as vocal in the echo chamber of the internet as the ones that were not X3 fans. But, and also, I felt, to go deeper into that for a second, I felt like X3 was a mistake. There were things that were wonderful in that movie, and I'm responsible for a lot of things that were not as wonderful in that movie. But I think the mistake that we made was actually veering too far away from the source material in terms of X3 and not trusting it. It was the Dark Phoenix story about Jean Grey's character, Famke Janssen's character, and instead of trusting that being a strong enough character-driven story, we created an A-plot. If you remember, you probably remember. Some people are in the.
I definitely remember.
Yeah, you do. That's why I'm looking at you because you're really hardcore. So, is that it's
the Cure? The
Cure plot.
Got a Cure, yeah.
So we created the Cure plot
as an
A plot of that movie, which didn't need an A plot. We made the Dark Phoenix story the B plot of the movie, and that was the fundamental mistake that we made in that film, not trusting that the story that is the most beloved and complex story, instead of diving deeper. Into the vertical complexity of the story, we made it more horizontal and broader, and that was the mistake.
I like what you said, Sean, about feeling entitled to know a little bit better. Because everything that we do it rests on the fans. Like they're the bedrock of everything we make. Yeah. The best example of it I saw, and it was instructive to me going forward. I wrote the Dark Knight in 2005. 2006, Chris came to try to figure out, okay, we're going to try to tackle Joker, and Nicholson owned the role. Whatever you thought of the original films, and I liked them a lot, but they were Tim Burton films. That role felt, it was an enormous challenge for us. And Chris had a good meeting with Heath Ledger, and no one got it. I didn't get it. The studio didn't get it. Everyone was coming at Chris and saying, we don't see it. And the fan community was, I mean, we were fucking pilloried for it. Yeah. Right? This is a disaster. This is the worst casting decision ever made. And Chris just hunkered down and stuck to his guns and just kept moving along. That's right. Respectfully, it was a question of not giving the fans what they're asking for, but what they want. Right? What they really want, which is let's find a really fucking serious actor, someone who's going to come in here and just tear this role to pieces. And for me, I just, casting is such, beyond writing, casting is the most dangerous moment in every project. And the fans have extremely strong feelings. They know these characters. They think they know as well as you, and that's totally justified, but you've got to kind of stick to your guns through there.
We had a similar situation with the character Tobias Well, who's an albino. And they came up with a whole lot of ideas. Well, maybe we can hire a white actor and put makeup on him. I was like, well, yeah, we're not going to do that. And then maybe we don't go with the whole albino aspect of it. But I thought it was central to who he was as a person and why he was the way that he was. And we found this actor who maybe had done one job or two jobs, Marvin Crondon Jones. He was really known for rapping. But his look was amazing. And I figured, a lot of rappers act because they really are actors in a lot of ways. And no one thought he was going to do well. Even, I remember the first day that he was on set, we gave him the job, all the other actors showed up. And we were all watching. We'd never really seen him act in front of a camera, and he killed it. And everybody just took a big sigh of relief. And he's been like the most popular character on the show now. He's amazing. Cool. He's amazing.
I'm curious when it comes to expanding these worlds, whether it's a spin-off or I think you've worked on like 9 X-Men.
I don't know. I honestly have lost track. If you count Deadpool and the Logan movies,
7. He knows that too.
Exactly.
So Simon, maybe you can start by telling me when is it too much? Is there a time where
I hope never is the answer. The honest answer is, well, first of all, the source material in this particular case, in terms of the X-Men, has survived for decades, and there are hundreds or thousands of characters that you could really deep dive into. Obviously, we don't want to go into all of them. But what we have found in terms of doing standalone movies, or whatever you want to call them, spin-offs, or like Logan, like Deadpool, is that we do those when we feel and I think it's an important thing in general for genre, when we feel as though we can smuggle a different genre into the sort of super genre of the comic book movie. So Logan obviously was a Western, and Deadpool was kind of like a Monty Python comedy, R-rated comedy, at a time when R-rated comedies were not being made, at a time when Westerns were certainly not being made at the price point that we could make Logan for. So for us it was, if we're going to expand and tell different kinds of stories sort of coming off of the main line of the X-Men, they have to really be genuinely different kinds of stories, not just cheaper versions of an X-Men movie. And so we really have embraced, Emma Watts, as president of production at Fox, has been instrumental in this, each time defining for ourselves what is the subgenre that we are telling within the supergenre of a comic book adaptation or a superhero movie. And I think that's where you, as an artist, where you can really start to have fun, because you get all these, it's happening in Hollywood now, and everybody can speak to this. It's one of the reasons why everyone on this table is lucky enough to get stuff made, is that genre material, whether it's horror or science fiction or thriller or action, is sort of pushed out a lot of drama. Studios are making less and less dramas. They're even making less and less comedies. And so if you can smuggle those kinds of movies, what used to be called sort of mid-sized movies, the $50 million drama, doesn't exist anymore. The $50 million comedy rarely exists anymore. If you can smuggle that and some of those themes into this very digestible, genre, then you can have more fun. You can play.
We talk about that with, it's funny, exactly the same way, but using different, what I always tell our directors is that our movies, our low-budget horror movies, should play like Sundance dramas, like Sundance independent movies. And I always encourage them to think about, if you remove all the scares, will the movie be a good will the movie work? Will it be a fun movie to watch? Would it be a Sundance movie? So I think one of the terrific things about genre is that it's a delivery system for stories that don't go to the big screen anymore.
Yeah. Well, you call smuggling delivery system, I refer to it as a Trojan horse, basically. Because it's true, you have, and what you have is you have genre, which was formerly kind of, marginalized as the kind of less respectable kind of storytelling. it has moved. It's like we're not even talking about that anymore. We have a roundtable about the damn thing, right? And it's like whether it's Get Out or whether it's A Quiet Place or whether it's Stranger Things or any of the stuff that we work on. None of us spend time going, well, how can we service the genre tropes more? That stuff feels more innate. And we spend, at least on Stranger Things, on Arrival, which is a movie I produced last year, we're spending our time on character relationships, kind of theme, and stuff that you would be asking about any comedy or drama. They just happen to have the kind of trappings of genre appeal.
We've always approached Jessica Jones exactly like that. I mean, it's noir, is what it is. It's a detective series, and what I say to all of our directors is, if it looks like it came out of a comic book panel, that's not what I want to see. This is not, we don't shoot it as if it's a comic book, series. So that the look is very. In fact, we based our look in some ways. One of our models was Chinatown, and not necessarily the palette, but the very still cinematic frames and a lot of foreground. And so we've had a lot of the lovely response we've gotten is from people who are like, I don't like superhero movies, or I don't like genre, whatever it is, but shockingly, I really like yours. It's probably because I'm like the opposite of you. I don't have the background in.
What's Chinatown? What are you talking about?
Something really fun.
So I bring my own sort of separation from it, and because the comic book stuff is all there, the genre is all there, and so I don't need to lean into it. It's it's the ground on which we're building the rest of our.
Well, I just want to say I don't know what you guys are talking about with all this Trojan horse stuff, because Walking Dead is not a soap opera at all.
We're a family drama.
Right.
That's what we are. We're a family drama, and sometimes I forget that these people actually have to have something. It's fantastical happen.
Something's really fun about the notion of protecting the theatrical experience is that's kind of like, in the past, that's kind of been like a snobby, like, my movie has to be seen in this way. And now you cannot say the theatrical experience has to be protected and also not embrace genre. You just can't do it anymore, which is kind of fun for all of us. It was moving genre out of the ghetto into the mainstream.
And I think it's fun if, in fact, it's your voice. I think if you can't fake it. I mean, I think it's not like, I think a lot of the people that are more naturally pure drama or comedy writer-directors have moved into television.
Into TV.
And I think the people who loved genre, who loved Star Wars and Terminator and all the Die Hard and all the great movies that we were all kind of roughly the same age, we all grew up on, those people now, like Shawn was saying, have moved from the margins into the center, very much the center. And the fanboys and fangirls that we're talking about are actually the most vocal. In the echo chamber of the internet, they are the loudest voice. Even if they are not the largest majority, they are the loudest voice.
High school was tough, but we won.
Well, having written all the Twilight movies, I will tell you, there is no one more fierce a critic than a tween girl. That you take your life into your own hands if you mess with their stuff.
TV has become so big and has so many great stories it's telling right now. And Jason, I know with Sharp Objects, it was originally planned as a film, and now it's moving to TV. How hard was it to make that switch, and was that made sort of as TV became what it is?
It was relatively hard. We optioned the book a long time ago, and Marty Noxon is the one who had the idea. She came to, and we were trying to do it as a movie, and it was just falling into exactly what you said. Kind of, it's even though it is genre, there's a lot of drama in it, and there's a lot of character work, and Marty pitched it as a series to me a long time ago, and it definitely that was very exciting to me, but there were other financiers, other people involved, and it took a long time to actually shift it to be able to tell it in a longer format. But it definitely found the right home.
Excuse me? You think bad things didn't happen to little girls when she was my age? I know they did. And you let Camille...
And look what happened to her. You need to understand your sister does not see herself in a good light. It's caused her difficulty. You need to be careful with Camille. She is not someone to be admired.
What difficulty?
No. Look at me. Look at me. You are not safe around her. Do you understand me?
I think there's a really cool thing going on. We're doing something with The Purge where we're the fourth Purge movie opens in July, and the Purge TV series is going to premiere 60 days after our July date in October. And we're we start to shoot in 3 weeks or whatever, and we have 10 episodes of The Purge going on in TV. The stories are going to be a little bit, it's going to be promoted at the very end of the movie, but it's going to be a different storyline between the movies and the TV series, and it'll be an interesting experiment to see how that goes.
Well, we've done that on the X-Men franchise with Legion and Gifted. They're totally different in their relationship to the movies. Gifted is actually within roughly the universe of the films, and Legion that Noah Hawley created is entirely its own thing. It plays by its own rules. When someone here was talking about like giving away secrets, like I couldn't give away secrets to Legion because like I think the only person that fully understands is Noah. So like I'm like the fans where I'm like I have theories about what's happening, but I'm not 100% sure.
Tell me something. And don't screw with me, okay? Am I really here? Because if I'm not, and I wake up back there with him.
You're here. Hey, you're here. With me. And I won't let anything bad happen to you.
I'm curious when it comes to expanding these worlds, whether it's a spin-off or I think you've worked on like 9 X-Men.
I don't know. I honestly have lost track. If you count Deadpool and the Logan movies,
7. He knows that too.
Exactly.
I do want to talk about who tells stories in genre. Melissa, I know the second season of Jessica Jones was directed by all women, and Salim, I know Black Lightning had a really diverse slate of directors, but in general, I would say genre is not a diverse home for storytellers. Are there conversations going on now more than ever about getting more diverse voices, more diverse directors?
The audience is diverse. Horror movies skew female, 55% female. So it obviously makes sense that there should be more genre, at least low budget scary movies made by women, by minorities, African American, Hispanic. They also skew much larger to those audiences. So it would certainly make sense that those are the voices of the movies. And I think it's starting.
The short answer is I'm sure we would all those conversations are very much happening,
and
very
movies
loudly,
happening,
and I think over the next couple of years you're going to see the outgrowth of that. I think it's going to be fantastic. But those conversations are pervasive, constant, and there's a massive and rightful course correction taking place. That's certainly on everything that I'm working on, both in film and in television. So I assume, again, it's not going to happen instantly, but it's going to happen.
I think it's happening largely though because of commercial reasons. I feel like Hollywood's asleep, and Get Out does what it does. It's a wise commercial decision. It's not because everyone's being nice,
We've been having this conversation since Soul Food and Girlfriends. We've been having that conversation and hiring in the way that we always hired as diverse. I mean, I've always felt like I've worked in genre because there was a time when if you did black television, that was considered a genre. I remember when one of our shows got canceled, I was up to direct a pilot and they looked at my resume and they said, but you've only done black shows. And I said, well, it's not like I'm directing animals. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm directing human beings telling stories. And I think with Mara especially, she's very much about promoting women and always been that way. And with me, I've just always wanted a diverse, because I think a diverse writing room and a diverse crew, because I think it adds to what you're doing, because you have all of this different energy walking around, and just hearing someone's accent may trigger something in your own creativity that make you say, oh, that it may be good if this came from a Latin perspective. So we've had that conversation for a while, and I hope, because the only way that these things will really change is if the conversations are going on, and showrunners and casting directors and people who honestly want to see some sort of change.
Well, at the Oscars, Frances McDormand brought up the idea of inclusion writers. Is that something you think would be actually possible at any of your companies or any of your shows? Or something actually in writing about having more diverse?
No, I personally, I wouldn't put it in writing because I've been doing it so long that, it's like almost to me it would be an insult for me to have to write something down. I've been doing this, and so I think if anybody were to come to me, they would come to me and say, how do you do this? Because we've been doing it. I don't think people, and I also don't think people should be forced. Because if it's forced, it's not going to work. If it's not part of your heart, if it's not a part of you as a person, then I think you should shy away from it because it's going to change.
I don't know that
it's going to change.
Though.
Well, you're changing it. Ava's changing it. I'm going to help change it. I mean,
but just think about the DGA. For those of you who are directors, the DGA put into place that every show had to hire 2 women, and the attitude about that was just horrific. I mean, in the executive suite, it's like, oh God, we got to get the chick in there, and she's going to suck and all that. But I think that helped female directors get some experience under the belt, some credits under the belt. So I do. I know. I just
every
the women I've
program
talked
that
to.
I've ever sort of heard about. It's just, to your point, it's just a program for corporate America to be able to say we have a program. Whereas I think showrunners and showrunners, the people who actually hire, are the change makers. They're gonna, if you hire someone, you're making change. If you put someone in a program, you're making them an example.
Well,
I think there's a middle ground.
I agree with you. The programs are useless.
There's a middle ground, which I actually think is super effective. SAG has the minority rule. We cast, if you cast a certain amount of minorities, you pay a lower rate. It hits you in the pocketbook. I think that gets us used to thinking in a different way. It's definitely affected our casting a lot.
Yeah. To your point about it earlier, though, I'm sorry, but to your point about it, I think what's driving this is the fact that people now know that there's a business out there.
Yes, I agree.
And you're not going to be able to tell authentic stories if you don't hire people who know how to authentically tell those stories. I could always watch TV and tell, a white writer wrote that about a black person. So you got to find some authenticity, and I think that's what's selling now.
Well, I was just going to say, as a straight white male, you can never underestimate the ignorance of a straight white male. And so I think that, I don't know the ins and outs of all these programs, but I think that if there is an incentive program that makes you hire more women and minorities,
or encourages
it encourages you, it makes you think about that in a way that we often don't, you know? I don't think that people are necessarily aiming to not hire women and minorities. It's just something that we don't think about, which is the unfortunate, thing.
It's the people around this table that move the needle here, right? It's the producers, the people, to your point, Salim, it's the people who hire. I remember the first season on Person of Interest, Nina Hassler called me and said, you have to hire at least 1 female director. I thought we're doing 23 episodes. That's ridiculous. We'll go 50-50. I couldn't hire 1 female director. They were all booked. All the ones that the studio and the network would sign off on, they were all booked. In terms of getting higher representation of women in the director's chair, it goes all the way down the line with the production. When you're a producer, you have to hire women in your camera department. You have to hire them in your AD department. You have to hire them in your writing staff. It's kind of up to us. When we looked at programs, I think there's definitely an argument to be made about the efficacy of that. But there is a personal responsibility here. You have to take the bull by the horns and start changing it, making the world the way you want it to see it.
I think sort of along these lines, we've heard a lot about the gender pay gap lately. It came out that Claire Foy had actually gotten less than Matt Smith on The Crown, and there have been other sort of things revealed about the pay difference between men and women when it comes to actors. Are any of you having conversations about, when you have a big ensemble cast, is everyone getting what they deserve?
To do it with actors is very complicated, because if the man is more famous than the woman, and if the woman is more famous than the man, the woman should make more. Now, clearly there have been instances where that has not happened, but the problem, and what really does not help the argument, is to insist on parity when the level of celebrity is different, because that makes men...
Or the size of role.
Or the size of role, exactly. There are a lot of factors. It's definitely not fair, but the pendulum went too far the other way, and it's got to kind of be straightened out. So I'll say a version of that.
When we did these new deals with our cast, What I can definitely tell you is it was not even a little bit gender-based. It was based on the narrative weight of the show, the cultural footprint of the show, and really thinking about these characters and these performers in those terms, not even slightly about whether someone was male or female. And it is complicated, not specific to Stranger Things, because there's that whole story similarly about Wahlberg and Michelle Williams on Ridley's movie. And, film and television traditionally has been a quote-based business, which means what you get paid is based on what you have been paid. And so there have been instances where it is absolutely a gender bias that is inarguable, indefensible, and kind of just ridiculous and, has to go. There's other situations where it is based on body of work that, again, is not related to gender as much as history.
Right.
And on quotes. And so these are, we could spend a whole roundtable on that topic only to say it's incredibly complex.
It is complex.
My wife and I run Westworld together, so this is an issue that we take home with us every day. We felt very strongly about it, and I think respectfully, I think the pendulum still has a little ways left to go.
Oh, it definitely does. I'm not suggesting it's, but all I'm saying is it's not helping the pendulum move where it should when you use gender to push for really unequal or unjust pay scales. That's not helpful to moving the pendulum. The pendulum is not there yet. I totally agree.
But to your point, the way that television works, people come in with a quote, and the problem with the quote is it may be based on a systemic bias.
That's the problem with the quote.
For the first couple of seasons, it's rational on a level, or the first season for sure, when you have no idea what you have, it's rational on some level that you come in with a quote. I'm very proud on our show that moving forward we'll be in a position in which all our leads are getting paid the same, because the show is a hit, and the contributions of each and every one of our leads is part of that being a hit. To your point, Robert, it's the workload. Everyone's in there working their ass off, and they should be getting paid the same.
HBO recently said that they were going through every show to make sure there were no issues with this. Was your show part of that review?
It wasn't a review. Lisa and I have been pushing for 3 years to get to this place. As soon as the first season hit, we were already in production on the second season. We knew that we had the leverage to negotiate in part on behalf of our actors and ourselves and everyone else to say it's a hit. We got to make this right. Luckily, we're working with a fantastic network whose head was in the same place. It was a very easy conversation.
So when it comes to the fifth season, sixth season of a show, the ninth movie in a franchise, how concerned are you all with barrier to entry, with getting new fans to something, a story that's been told for several seasons or years now? Is that something you talk about?
I mean, I feel like the modern climate of availability as far as entertainment goes helps us get past that. I think that, Walking Dead's going into its ninth season. If it was 15, 20 years ago, we would be trying to cater the season to people who had never watched the show before. But the fact that I could basically pull my phone out and just go on Netflix on my phone and watch season one and just get caught up. And so it becomes a little bit of a, one thing we discuss is, are we going to get any viewers who hear about Walking Dead and are like, well, I'm going to sit down and watch 8 seasons now in preparation for the 9th season. That's something we worry about. Right. But as far as, if people are all caught up I think that it's possible for people to get out there, and it's very easy for them to, dive into that show, and as long as everything's available, it's not something that we're really concerned about.
I feel the obligation is, if I understand your question correctly, I feel the obligation is the opposite. It's not actually a barrier of entry in terms of catching the audience up. It's actually a barrier of catching the audience off guard. That you actually, on the 4th, 5th season, on the 9th film, like you were saying, 7th film, however many you can tell me that I've worked on in the X-Men, you want audiences to feel that it's not the same movie that they saw 20 years ago, or it is as fresh as any other movie out there. It's not being actually compared to previous X-Men movies. It's being compared to Black Panther and to Avengers and to Arrival and to anything within all of the genre spaces we're talking about. And I think there is an obligation as an artist to keep evolving, and there's an obligation when you're working on a franchise to have it keep feeling as fresh as the first one did 20 years ago. And that's a very hard thing to do. Yeah. 9 movies in or 10 seasons in or whatever it is. But that is our obligation as artists.
Ideally, original IP old original IP should be used as a marketing tool for new stories. That's ideally what what we're all trying to do, and sometimes we succeed and sometimes we don't. But it's a way to get people in to see your new story.
And I think when you repeat, you fail.
Absolutely.
Going back even to, let's say, our collective childhoods in like the 70s and 80s, the movies that sequelized and just repeated, like after, I could name a lot, but I won't.
I love Escape from LA. What are you talking about?
When you feel that, you've, especially now with all the different places that people can go for entertainment and for storytelling, if you're not fresh and people feel like you're just a retread of something that they've seen before, they're not going to leave their house and park their car and get a babysitter and turn their phone off and sit there for 2 hours in the dark, in some place. They're just simply not. There is a need to evolve that makes the audience feel like there's a need to see.
And I think to your point, please, no, go ahead.
It applies absolutely to television and doing one season after another. And fortunately on premium cable and streaming, probably more so than network. But you take, it's an enormous risk that you take. Because you're like, we had Kilgrave in Jessica Jones' first season, which he was everyone loved hating Kilgrave, and not wanting, as I said before, not wanting to repeat ourselves, went with an entirely different kind of villain, non-villain, and. It's like you put that out into the world, you go, oh my God, they're going to kill me because I don't have Kilgrave. And sure enough, some people did. But I mean, when I was writing on Dexter way back, it was like every year we'd have to just completely do something different. We were, successful a lot of the time, sometimes we weren't. But it's always terrifying and always a huge risk. But we're not doing our jobs if we're not. We're pushing ourselves.
Yeah. And I think to your point about passion, and keeping that sort of passion about what you're doing, not just doing it because it's a great job. If it feels like that, you either get someone younger and have them come in and do it for you. And I think, to your point, not getting the passion beat out of you. It really, you can come back that following season and be passionate about what you want to say and what you want to do. I think takes that fear away of.
To those of you running shows, do you have an idea in your head how many seasons would be enough seasons, and you would actually want to be the one to end it before it
7.
starts?
Like 100 for me. I'm kidding.
It used to be in television. That's what you were aiming for. 100 episodes, and we've had 3 series, I think, go to that. One of them, I think, should have been canceled like 5 years before it was canceled. But I think
Which one?
Yeah, right. My wife would kill me if I told you. But I think for me now, it just depends on what I just said. For me, it depends on how passionate I am to go walk in that room and tell stories with the writers and the people that I work with. I really enjoy the atmosphere that we create. And as long as I'm doing that, as long as I'm getting up and I'm like, oh fuck, I gotta go to work, then I'm happy.
So you guys, we're gonna start to wrap things up with some lighter, fun lightning round questions.
Excellent.
So I'd love to start with
Good.
who or what do you turn to decompress from the stress of your job?
I can answer this already. Angry Birds and CNN at the same time.
Wow.
I know. I'm embarrassed to say it, but it's true.
You said it earlier, so it is true.
It's true.
Privately,
because he said it off
I said,
camera.
instead of a vodka, I have 45 minutes of Angry Birds and CNN, and somehow I find that very soothing.
Well, I
That
get it.
shows you my
Fun
twisted
CNs,
brain.
Yeah, the news soothing.
I have 4 daughters, and so I've told my daughters that once upon a time there was this idea that when mom or dad would come home from work, there was leave them alone for a minute, let them decompress, let mom or dad have their whatever it was, right? The second, I'm sure everyone around this table has done 20 phone calls a day in their driveway. Because I know that when I walk in the door, it's the off switch for the workday and the on switch for dad. And I'm gonna get, and by the way, it's awesome. It's exhausting, but that is also my decompression. So.
That's why I come home later and later every day.
Why do you think we're here right now?
And for me, it's about watching all your shows and movies. I just zone out and watch how other people do it. And it's glad I don't have to. Just
That's true too. I'm glad I'm not involved.
I watch everyone here. I watch.
That looked difficult.
Wow, how did you do that?
Either of you?
I think for me, it's kids' baseball games and basketball games. I have the best, most relaxed time at those places. And just hanging out with my wife. We work together, but we have the same rule that once we cross that threshold, it's just us and we're best friends. So family is it for me.
Yeah, I can answer both questions at once. It's my children. We've had one child per season, so Westworld 2. 2 seasons.
How many children do you want to have?
It is interesting that you didn't answer the earlier question about how many seasons you want.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, guys, our next one here. What were you afraid of as a kid?
Ghosts.
Snakes.
Zodiac Killer.
Really?
Oh, wow.
I was
You took it to a real place.
I know. No, but I
You
lived-
reminded me, I was afraid of the Atlanta Killer.
I was afraid of the Night Stalker when I was in LA growing up, actually. But
Who was the Atlanta Killer?
It's narcissism.
I don't know.
Who thinks those killers are coming
Who
for
was the
them?
killer
Come
in
on, guys.
Atlanta? Remember the
I don't
Atlanta
know. I was
serial
worrying
killer?
about snakes.
Wayne Williams.
What was it?
Wayne Williams, right?
Yeah, Wayne Williams.
Good call.
Yeah.
You're from the Bay Area.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Bay Area at that time. So
I grew up
that
in Richmond,
was-
California.
I'm sorry?
I grew up in Richmond,
So
California.
you were around that too.
So I was afraid of police.
Yeah.
All we had in Kentucky were tornadoes.
And ghosts.
And ghosts.
ghosts, apparently.
Oh, man.
All right. What is...
Nolan has no fear.
Nolan.
Just in case.
Afraid of a
Just
damn
in
thing.
case.
Look at him.
Just look at him.
What would he have to be scared of?
No, I had 2 older brothers who had a VHS copy of the movie Alien, right? And older brothers, right? So I'm the baby. I was the youngest brother, and so I would come home after school as a latchkey kid. I'd come home after school, age 6, 7, 8, and I would watch 5 more seconds of Alien. I know the first 45 seconds of Alien better than any movie made. And I would just try to advance a little bit further. So my fear is, a parasitic alien life form.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
What superhero power do you wish you had?
Oh, invisible.
Really?
Definitely.
That means you're a creep.
I know. Love to spy on everyone.
Only a creepy person wants to be invisible.
I know. I'll take it.
I say flight, but secretly invisible.
Yeah.
I think the stopping time for me, and I suspect
Ooh,
that's
that
true for
would be
everybody.
good, too.
It's like all of us.
Oh, that's better. I want that one instead.
I get to ask this question a lot.
Does the stopping time only work for you, or does it work for everyone?
Only for. So everyone's
around
frozen. You're not frozen.
Really?
Oh, that's the best one.
That's the best.
No, but that's like, I thought you were going
That's
metaphorical, fear of death, mortality.
No.
So you're still advanced.
It's 28-hour days. It's how you do whatever you want to do. You have your private time. You also have time to do more work, less work, watch more basketball, listen to more music. That'd be the superpower that I would.
That's a great one.
But you are aging.
Better than invisibility, too.
But you would be invisible because they would all be unconscious.
You would, yes, right.
I was saying you'd still be aging, though, and everyone frozen.
I don't mind, yeah.
That's okay.
I hadn't thought that all the way through. I didn't know you were actually offering a superpower. I did not know you were. There was the surprise.
All right, guys, our last one here. Do you have a question that you wish fans would stop asking about one of your projects?
Fans are like, when am I going to get to see fill in the blank?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's a certain point at which you're kind of like, you're going to see it when it's ready and awesome. And before then, you're not going to want to see it. Trust me.
Keep on hearing,
Another good answer.
That's a great answer.
Thanks, guys.
I
Thanks.
mean,
felt like this
Kinberg's
panel.
got it.
I like this panel.
Mine's like, when are Jessica and Trish going to become lovers? I'm like, can't they just be good friends? You know?
No,
Melissa,
they can't.
apparently they can't.
No.
Okay, you bring Barb back.
Yeah.
I'll have them.
Right. See, we're brokering deals.
Jonathan, I assume there's 8,000 Westworld questions.
No, I don't ever want them to stop asking questions. I love the fact they ask questions. As long as I don't have to listen to them.
Real diplomat. Well, you don't.
I just hold up
This is
my
because he's not on social media.
Not on social media.
He's not on, yes, he doesn't hear the questions. Yes, exactly. Very smart.
I love the fans, but I get this. I get the same question from a lot of different people where they'll come up and they'll say, it's not even really a question. Why am I answering? Anyway, they'll come up to me and they'll say, I've got this great idea for a character, and they'll go into this like huge description of all the ins and outs of this character, and like 5 minutes into it, I start noticing that they're, describing themselves and attributes that they clearly have. And then at the end of it, they always say, and I would be perfect for this character. Perfect for this character. And I'm talking like conventions, sometimes on Twitter, like people that are not actors, that have never acted before in their lives. And it's just, why do they do that? I don't know. But that one I wish would stop, because so many people do it. It's crazy.
There's also one who has like, this great idea for a movie. It's, one line, and I'd be willing to give you a piece of it. Like,
I have one question for Shawn to end.
Please.
Is it true that the set of a genre, either movie or TV show, is much more fun than the set of a comedy?
That's a very unexpected question. It is often more fun because people who work in comedy have a darkness in them that is darker than genre.
I always say this and no one believes me,
This
but
is the
coming
truth.
from you,
Yeah, no, people who
that's right.
devote
Genre
themselves to comedy,
movies
there's an innate darkness that actual people who work in dark genre
don't have.
So, good
Shawn,
question.
thank you.
And I think a true final answer.
I agree.
Fantastic. And we're getting on.
Bonus question.
Let's run.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Nolan.
I'm Salim Akil.
I'm Jason Blum.
Hi, I'm Simon Kinberg. Thanks for watching.
thanks for watching The Hollywood Reporter.
Thanks for watching The Hollywood Reporter on YouTube.
Thanks for watching The Hollywood Reporter on YouTube.